Okay, so we're going to go through again the new token system and arcade, which was just launched yesterday on the site. And let me go ahead and show my screen. You should be able to see my screen now. It says USATestprep, your classroom partner, token system, and arcade. So I'm going to go through just some information about the new token system, and then if we have time, I'll do some live demos, and then we'll have Q&A. Okay, so the first question, why the change? Because it is a pretty significant change that we restructured our game system. We found that with the old system, students would go to a game and basically just rush through the questions, answer them however, just to get to the game portion. So we found that they weren't really as effective as they could be. So the idea was to remove questions from games and instead just make a game cost a certain number of tokens, which students have to earn by completing practice on the site. So that hopefully it will give them more incentive to do well on assignments and activities, so that they can earn tokens to play the games. And it also helps with future development of adding games, because it's much easier to develop new games that don't have questions as part of them and just make it an arcade game. And so we do have a couple that are currently in development that I think students will really enjoy. And so it just makes it easier to offer those new games for the future. Another question, how do students earn tokens? They can earn tokens in lots of different ways. Basically, any assignment that you create, they can earn tokens from just by completing it, and also independent practice, because with our site, as many of you know, we have basically two different routes that students can work, either through assignments that are created for them, or they can go to any content area page on the site and they can work on their own. So they can earn tokens from both places. So if they complete tests, practice questions, vocabulary, performance tasks, videos, crossword puzzles, they can also earn token if they would want to retest missed questions. So if that's something that you've allowed them to do as part of your assignment, as if they complete that retest, they're going to earn an additional token. They also earn a token if they have completed an entire standard on a content area page, and I'll show you what that is so you know what exactly I'm referring to. The one exception that students will not earn tokens for right now is completing a benchmark. We decided, since lots of schools use those as diagnostic assessments or baselines, that's just not something that we wanted to associate tokens with. If we hear differently, that's something we can always change in the future, but as of right now, benchmarks are excluded from earning tokens. Okay, then let me go ahead and go to the next thing here. So the next question is, how many tokens can be earned? This is kind of hard to see, so let me zoom in. For most of the practice activities, so practice questions, vocabulary, performance tasks, videos, and crossword puzzles, here's the breakdown. If a student scores 0, they don't earn any tokens. Anything between a 1% and a 66, they get 1, because we do want to encourage students for trying on the site, especially if it's an area that they're struggling in. If they get above a 66%, 2 tokens, above 85, 3, and 100 is 4. And these token amounts are based on our dot system on the site. So the pink, orange, and green dots that you see across the site, those scores are lined up with this. So essentially, one token, the 1 and 2 tokens, like a pink dot, or I'm sorry, you have a pink dot for the 1 to 66%, an orange dot, and a green dot above an 85% for being proficient. Tests are given more tokens, so it's the same kind of breakdown, but as you can see, there are about 2 tokens more compared to the other types of activities. And then again, if the students retest their missed questions, they earn 1 additional token for that activity. Even if they don't answer any other questions correct, they still get 1 just for going through and completing the retest attempt. So next, where do students spend tokens? So the idea is that they will spend them on games. and we have a new game arcade where games are located. There's a button on the student homepage to access the new game arcade, and it's also available at the top of any subject landing page, which this is what I mean by a subject landing page, where it has, your content area, and students can do some practice here as well. So from here, there's a game arcade button. And in the past, when a student clicked to work on a standard, and all of these different boxes appear here, games used to be in this last box along with puzzles. However, they've been removed, so that is only for puzzles now. Games will no longer be located there. They have to go through the game arcade. And this is also the page that if a student completes one of these activities, so if they complete questions, or if they've done all the performance tasks here and they get that green check, that also earns them 1 token for having that completed. So that is where they'll spend tokens. We do have future plans to add more avatars to our system. So if a student wanted to change their avatar picture on their homepage, they're going to have a lot more options, and some of those will cost a different number of tokens. So that's going to be another place where they can go and spend tokens on the site, is their avatar picture. Okay, so, and again, if you have questions as you think of them, feel free to type them in and I'll make sure I address them at the end. So the game arcade itself, once the student goes into the game arcade, they're going to have 2 types of games. We have our token games, which cost right now either 1, 2, 3, or 4 tokens, and we also have games that are free. And the difference with these is that the token games, first of all, whether it's a 1 token game or 2 or 3 or 4 token game, is based really on how long the game is and how many levels there are, because we want to make it fair. So for example, the mini golf game is 4 tokens because it is a longer game with multi-levels. Same thing with Alpine Climber, there's 3 levels involved, versus Naughty Chicken, it's just a single level. Same with Sasquatch, is 1 token as well, which isn't pictured here. Then we also, or I'm sorry, it's a 2 token actually, because that one is more popular. We have a new game, Penelope's Potions, which is 2 tokens because it is new. It's kind of like a Bejeweled type game. I think students will find it fun, and they can do it on their phone or a tablet as well. Now the free play games, these are free because they still have questions as part of them. So if a student were to go to Revelio or Walk the Plank or Armageddon, they're still going to have questions to play the game. Just because the questions are so much a part of that game, it's hard to take them out. So it's not really a true arcade type game, whereas the others, we were able to very easily remove those questions from it. So that's the difference. The token games have no questions, they just play the game, and the free play do still have questions. And when the students go to play a free play game, they will pick exactly what standard they want the game questions to come from, just like they have in the past. So that way they can focus in on a specific standard if that's what you're asking them to work on. Then the student homepage will have a couple of changes. One, you're going to see a total token count next to the right of the avatar picture here. So you'll see how many tokens a student has. And currently that's something only visible from the student side. So if you're logged in as a teacher into your account, you're not going to have a way to see the number of tokens for students. That may be something we will add down the road into like your manage class page where you have your list of students. But currently we felt like it was more important for the students to obviously be able to view and track their tokens. We also have included a game arcade button on the student homepage. So that is right there below their graded work. So it's very easy to access. Also, if you click on that total token right here, that's actually a link which will take you to the token history for a student. So if you ever needed to look at this for whatever reason, or if a student was wondering how they had a certain number of tokens, you can come here, you can log in as a student, come here and be able to see what they've earned tokens from and what they've spent. And some of this is a lot like their graded work. But the one thing that's going to be different is the green check mark. If you see a green check mark in a student's token history, that is referring to their subject landing page where they completed a box. So back up here, if they've completed one of these, that's going to be that green check mark, and so it will show up in their token history as a check, and in this case it says vocabulary check mark earned. So they checked off that vocabulary box. So that's just a way to keep track of all of that. Now another feature we have, because we felt like some teachers may want to save the arcade maybe for the end of class after students have worked instead of having access for students to go in at any point during the class period. And so within your Manage Class page, so from your Classes tab over on the right, you have that little gear icon to go into Manage Class. We added a Lock Game Arcade button. So if for a certain length of time or for your class period you wish to lock the arcade, you can. These are the increments that we have right now. 15 minutes, 30, 45 minutes, 1 hour, hour and a half, and 2 hours. So if your class, maybe it's an hour and 40 minutes, you could always lock it for 2 hours, and then once everybody is at a good stopping point and you're ready to reward them with going into the arcade, you could then unlock it. So it can be unlocked at any time. You don't have to wait until this expires. That way, if students are done working before the timer goes off, just go ahead, go back here. It will say Unlock Game Arcade, and then you can unlock it for students to go in and work and play the games there. So that again is in your Manage Class page. And by the way, if you have locked it for a student, that means that they can't access it whatsoever. So even if they're in another class, if your class lock is still active, they will not be able to go into the arcade. And then we have a couple other changes that you'll see when you create assignments. The first thing I wanted to mention is that if you already have existing assignments where you have games in there, none of that was affected. So everything will stay exactly the way you have created your assignments, but you'll notice some changes when you're creating new assignments going forward. So the first thing is that you can no longer assign a game as a single assignment. So in the past, we did have that as an option where you're creating a single assignment. We had game right there to choose from. You'll no longer be able to do that. You can, however, still assign games as part of a larger group assignment. And so if you've created an assignment before, this is what the group assignment page looks like. So you'll still have your games here to choose from. However, there are limited options compared to what you've seen in the past, just because a lot of the games that you were able to assign before have been transitioned over to arcade mode, meaning the questions have been pulled out from them. So we didn't feel like it would be, it would make sense to assign a game that there's no questions to answer. So these are the 3 games that you'll be able to assign, just because they do still have questions as part of them. And we had also found in the past that if teachers assign 2-player games as part of an assignment, it made it more difficult for students to be able to find, a partner and then complete their assignment. So we just took multiplayer games out and games that have been moved over to the arcade. So that is definitely one change that you'll see. So that's the end of all the information that I've wanted to go over. I know it's kind of a lot, and I wanted now to log into the site to point out some of this and how it actually looks like if you are logging in. So give me just a second. I'll pull this up here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and get logged in as a sample teacher and go over some of this, and then I'll be happy to go through any questions. Okay, so here I'm logged in as a teacher. We do have this pop-up announcement when you log in. So we do have a brief video you could watch, but obviously if you're going through the webinar, you may not need that. And So here, nothing, again, looks different for you. Really, as a teacher, the only difference you'll notice is when you go to create an assignment. When you're creating a single assignment, you'll no longer have the option, and yes, we do still have game listed there. Our programmers are working to remove that because I know that's confusing. But you see, you just have test, practice, and videos, so games are no longer there. If I go back and choose a group assignment, go ahead and choose my content area. Down here under practice, where you've always had games before, you'll still have the game options. I'm just waiting for this to load here. Okay, so over here on the right, I have games, and again, it just looks, there's fewer games here to choose from than you've had before. Oh, and let me see, I'm sorry, I didn't switch my preview. Give me just a second. Okay, so I'm sorry about that. Hopefully everyone can now see my screen. I'm in the Create Assignment page where I went to Single Assignment, and we still have Game listed. We're going to remove that out because if you click Continue, you'll no longer see Game as an option. But if I go back now and choose Group Assignment, and over here click Games, you'll just see 3 options compared to what you've had to in the past. So that is a little bit of a change. And then if you go back home, that's really going to be the only difference that you'll notice from your end. If you go into Manage Class from your Classes tab, over on the right, you'll have the Lock Game Arcade button, and when you click on that, then you'll have what class you want to lock it for, because it is a class lock. So we figured that, if you're working with one class period, you wouldn't have a need to lock it for all of your students, but if you need to lock the arcade for all of your students at one time, you will have to go into each class to lock it, and you'll just choose how long you want to lock it for. Click Lock, and then that's going to update this. And now that has changed to Unlock Game Arcade. So that way, if you want to go back and unlock it at any point, you can. And let me just log in as a student because I'm going to show what that looks like if they try and access it. So I'm just going to log in as a student. Okay, so as a student, I can again see the total number of tokens here. And if I try and go into the Game Arcade, it's going to give me a message that it is currently locked. And I can see which teacher, what class it's locked for, and how long that lock is remaining. So they will not be able to play the games. And if I go back to my account, my teacher account here, and go back to Manage Class, and unlock the Game Arcade, and then I can see exactly how long is left, just unlock it. Okay, so now it is unlocked. And so if I now go back in as a student, okay, so here I'm logged in as a student now, and if I go to the Game Arcade, I'll be able to see all of the games. And so again, this is what the arcade looks like for the student. They can see their total number of tokens at the top, and if they don't have enough tokens, it will let them know. So we ask them to earn more or select a different game. And again, the free ones they can play at any point because those still have questions attached to them. So they'll have to choose exactly what content area and what specific standards they want those game questions to come from. So all of that will operate just like before. If they are choosing a game that is a token game, it will ask them if they're sure they want to spend their tokens, because once they click to start the game, those tokens are spent. And it also lets them know that if they refresh the page, again, they'll have tokens spent. Okay, so here's the game, and this is the Penelope's Potions one, where students have to basically just shoot the potion and match up the colors to get 3 in a row, or 3 together. And this on tablets and phones as well. So that's what that one looks like, and if I go back to the arcade, notice I'm now down to 0, so even though I didn't finish, I X out the game early. As soon as I start that game, the tokens are gone. And then let me go back home and click on the token count here. Again, this is the token history, so I can see what I've done to earn tokens and what I've spent tokens on as well. You may have some students, when they log in, they may already have a high number of tokens, and the reason for that, if they've already earned a lot of tokens, it's actually because if they go to one of their content pages, if they have already completed some of these sections here for a certain standard, or they've earned a star, they're going to, that does retroactively give them tokens. Now, if they've done assignments and activities, those are not credited with tokens. It's only what they've done from yesterday afternoon onward. But the one exception is if they've earned these check marks, they will earn tokens for any of them that they already had checked. So that's why you may see students already with a certain number of tokens, even though this just went live yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and ask now for any questions. Make sure I get those answered. I will be sending out an email later today with a link to the recording for this. That way, if you want to go back and review it as a reference, you can. So again, let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to start going through those.